Hurricane Nate made landfall Saturday night at the mouth of the Mississippi River.
Hurricane Nate slamming into the seawall here.
This is the worst hurricane that has impacted Mississippi since Hurricane Katrina.
Breaking tonight, a note found in the hotel room of Las Vegas shooter Stephen Paddock.
It was a mathematical calculation so the killer could murder as many people as possible.
The president tweeted there's only one thing that's going to work with North Korea.
This should have been handled 25 years ago. Should have been handled 10 years ago. I was handed a mess.
If we could make a deal, at least on a temporary basis, because Obamacare is exploding. It's gone.
I'm thrilled y'all are here, and just know that we love you. Let's go live. Helping vets transition from military life to civilian life is going to be a huge contribution to the country.
The boys are back.
Yeah, we got Dean Cain back on the couch with us.
Very happy. Thank you.
Decided to return.
I was forced into it.
No, you weren't.
I was not, but I'm very
true.
happy to be here. It's wonderful.
We're thrilled to have you and Ed Henry. It's always good to have you on.
The amazing Ed Henry.
Yeah.
The amazing. Is that what you've heard about him?
I've heard that, but we'll find out.
To get that from the Man of Steel, that's pretty cool. Wow.
It's very cool. Well, good morning to all of you. Happy Sunday morning. We do want to get right to a Fox News alert. Nate is now downgraded to a tropical storm, but not before making landfall twice as a Category 1 hurricane overnight.
The Mississippi coast battling powerful storm surge and flooding.
The effects are also being felt in Alabama. That's where we find our own Rick Leventhal, who's live in Mobile. Good morning, Rick.
Good morning, Ed, Abby, and Dean. This is Water Street in downtown Mobile, which is obviously underwater. I'm told that this does flood on occasion, but this is somewhat unusual. You see a lot of water outside the Arthur Outlaw Mobile Convention Center, and then to our right, we can show you some firefighters with Mobile Fire and Rescue who are trying to help somebody who's in a car that's stuck down there. Apparently, the person in that vehicle doesn't want to get out. He drove into the high waters, as officials were telling people not to do, and now I'm not sure what he wants. I talked to the firefighters, and they don't seem to understand why this guy won't just get out of the car. Maybe he's waiting on a tow truck. We just don't know. But as you can see, there's a lot of water in the lowest lying areas of Mobile. But this state was spared the worst of the storm. It actually hit in Biloxi and Gulfport, Mississippi, just after midnight. That was the second landfall. The first landfall was in southeast Louisiana, in Plaquemines Parish, late Saturday afternoon, early evening, and then again it hit on the Gulf Coast, where Mississippi had not been hit by a hurricane making landfall in the state since Katrina in 2005. It came in as a Cat 1, 85, 90-mile-an-hour winds, brought storm surges up to 10 feet. A lot of the hotels and casinos along the Gulf Coast in Mississippi took on water. Ground floors, parking garages were in several feet of water. Many of those hotels evacuated ahead of the storm, as did some low-lying areas around Alabama. There are tens of thousands of people without power now along the Mississippi Gulf Coast, including some 46,000 customers in Mobile and the surrounding areas. But it's not. It doesn't appear to be as bad as the officials had once feared. So a lot of water downtown, but the trees are mostly intact, and buildings don't seem to be that badly damaged. So this was not as bad a storm as some in Alabama had feared, guys.
Rick, have you talked to anyone there? Have most of the people decided to stay back and just weather out the storm? What are people telling you there?
Well, you know, they knew it was a Cat 1, maybe a Cat 2 when it was coming in, but it wound up being a Cat 1. So we didn't hear a lot about evacuation. Some people did move to higher ground, but at least here in Alabama, most people just hunkered down and stayed, sheltered in place, as was the advice of officials. And again, really the only places that we're seeing that are bad so far are the low-lying areas like Water Street here in downtown Mobile.
All right, thank you so much, Rick.
Yeah, that looked like, as weak as it seems, it doesn't look that weak.
No.
It's a lot less than the other two storms have been. We need to find out more, so we're going over to Rick Reichmuhl, right? I messed him up 3 times yesterday, and it's Richmith. It's all the different names.
Rick told us yesterday that his own family members all pronounce his last name different ways, so he's not very critical when you say it wrong.
I'm not offended at all, but I like, Dean, how you're like, your name's easy. It's just Reichmuhl. I'm like, no.
Or Richmond, or it's something like that. It's Rick.
Rick, that's perfect. I'll take that. Yeah, so, you know, not all storms are the same. Obviously, we've seen that this year. Harvey, the big flooding mess. Irma, all the mess in the Keys from the storm surge. Obviously, what we saw with Maria in Puerto Rico. This was a smaller storm, certainly not nearly as strong. That said, any kind of a hurricane, a Cat 1 hurricane, is going to cause some damage. And right here along the Central Gulf, all of that water, the storm surge, pulls in, especially in towards Mobile Bay, a very susceptible area to it. And that's where we're seeing the flooding like we just saw where Rick is. But Mobile Bay getting this all along over towards Pascagoula and Biloxi, even over towards the panhandle of Florida. Now the center of the storm has moved onshore. Now we have a rain event. We still have the wind. Winds are at 70 miles an hour sustained. That will weaken rapidly throughout the day today because now it's over land. The friction just makes it weaken very quickly, and the loss of water source. However, we're also going to watch a threat for tornadoes. We do have a tornado watch that's in effect until 10 o'clock this morning, and you'll notice this rain is going to pull up all throughout parts of the Appalachians, and that's, I think, where we're going to see also some pretty significant flooding just because of the mountainous terrain. That water will run off into the creeks and the streams and potentially cause some flooding there. So more ahead still yet today, guys, from Nate.
Okay. Rick Reichmuth.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate it.
It's Rich Myth.
Now, obviously, on a serious note, we've been trying to get more details about what really happened in Las Vegas. Getting an idea of the motive has been a big mystery, but we're starting to get some of the clues about what was on that note in his hotel room. And that might unlock some of this in terms of what was going on inside his mind.
Yeah, there's an interview on 60 Minutes where you have some of the first officers that entered that hotel room. They broke into it. Brave guys, incredible guys. And to hear it from their perspective, it's eerie, it's chilling. They were right where the action was. They saw him dead on the ground. And as you said, Ed, they found this handwritten note on the bedside table that it looked like he had put all the calculations in to make sure that he got as close as he could or as accurate as he could to kill as many people
in terms
as
of
possible.
trajectory and all of that. And,
which is interesting. He's going to do that as a shooter. You know, it makes sense. He's sort of a, you know, this guy he's kind of a Rain Man, if you will. Clearly, he does a lot of things with numbers and so on and so forth. But as a shooter, you have those calculations. But if you have a bump stock on there, you might as well throw them in the garbage because you're completely inaccurate.
Threw it all off. And,
and I don't think it's been reported that he used the bump stocks. I'm not sure about that. But here's what...
Hearing from the gunfire, I'd be quite surprised if it wasn't.
If it wasn't. Yeah, you might
be
right about that. Here's what Officer David Newton said about what was on that note. He said, I could see it. He had handwritten the distance, the elevation he was on, the drop of what his bullet was going to be for the crowd. So he had that written down and figured out so he would know where to shoot to hit his targets from there. He was on the 32nd floor of that hotel.
So it shows it was premeditated, yes, clearly. And there's no suicide note, at least not yet. Maybe, you know, he has other residences. They're obviously combing through that. But that note doesn't give an idea of the motive, doesn't say, I'm going to kill myself. He wanted to get out. He wanted to try to get out alive, as we've seen from other evidence. Last night on Saturday Night Live, on one hand, there's this wonderful tribute, you know, for
Jason
all
Aldean,
the victims of Jason Aldean. And at the same time, providing a tribute to Tom Petty, who just passed.
Which is,
There's amazing. Jason Aldean there. So he opened up, I believe, Saturday Night Live last night. And he was on the stage that night when the shooting happened, and he gave an emotional tribute there. But then, as you mentioned, it goes to politics, as it always does on SNL.
Instead of Weekend Update being about jokes, you know, and obviously not about Vegas, find some other topics. They usually go after President Trump. Find something new. Go, you know, actually be funny. But instead, it becomes a rant on gun control. Watch.
The investigation into the tragedy in Las Vegas this week has sparked a larger debate in America between people who want common sense gun control and people who are wrong. The guy had 47 guns. No one should own 47 of anything. If you own 47 cats, you are not a responsible pet owner. You're a crazy cat lady.
Why is it so hard to get gun control in this country? I mean, who are these delicate snowflakes? No, you're not allowed to have 40 guns anymore, Earl. From now on, you can have one gun, max, and 6 bullets. If you can't hit what you're shooting with 6 bullets, then you don't need to be shooting at it. Learn karate or use your words. I'm sick of this narrative that Americans just love guns so much. It's not true.
Interesting jumping right
I would love your take, because you are a member of the NRA. You're a gun owner. How do you respond to that?
Well, I mean, I'd like them to be funny. I'd like them to be funny, but I don't find that funny. I'm being told that I can't have X number of anything. Well, what's the right number then? So can we have 6? Can we have 9? Or can we have 1 with 6 bullets, as he suggested?
How many people own 34, 37, you name it, guns? How many people own a bump stock?
Not many. Not many at all. But it's the slippery slope. You start saying you can't have, okay, you can have 12. Okay, you can have 6. And you're starting to limit it's an amendment. It's a right.
You had Nancy Pelosi, the House Democratic leader, this week say, I want a slippery slope. Right. I want to deal with bump stocks and then have that lead to broader gun control. You had Brett Stevens, columnist in the New York Times, saying, let's scrap the Second Amendment. Yeah, that's how far. That's where it goes. I like Jason Aldean's his comments. Unity, bring it together, and let's heal.
I agree. We need more of Jason Aldean.
Yes.
What do you guys think? Do you think that Weekend Update was that funny? Do you like what they said? Do you disagree? Do you agree with Dean Cain? Email us at friends@foxnews.com. Want to hear from you. But we do have some other headlines I want to bring you this morning. Vice President Mike Pence visiting Las Vegas nearly a week after that deadly shooting. The vice president paying his respects to the victims and honoring the heroes, assuring a packed City Hall that all Americans are Vegas strong.
We find comfort in the knowledge that we are united as one nation, as one people, with one voice. United in our grief, united in our support for those who have suffered, and united in our resolve to end such evil in our time.
The vice president made his final stop at a memorial where the shooting happened, placing a white rose on every cross, as you can see right there. And London is still on edge after a man drives his car into a crowd at a major tourist stop. Metropolitan Police still looking for witnesses at this hour. At least 11 people were injured near the city's Natural History Museum. The driver detained at the scene and was later arrested. Police say the incident was not terror-related and is being treated as a traffic collision. None of the injuries, luckily, were life-threatening. Also, this morning, President Trump expected to sign an executive order next week, making it easier for people to buy health insurance. The move aimed at rolling back regulations put in place by former President Barack Obama. The order will direct the departments of HHS, Labor, and Treasury to make it easier for people to group together and buy insurance through association health plans. It will broaden instructions for the agencies to explore ways to loosen regulations and possibly lower premiums. And I know the boys will love this one. The MLB playoffs are heating up. The Dodgers pushing the Arizona Diamondbacks to the brink, winning 8-5 to take 2-game lead. And in Washington, 8th inning home runs from Bryce Harper and Ryan Zimmerman lift the Washington Nationals, my team, over the Chicago Cubs in a dramatic fashion.
Tie it here in the 8th and threaten to take the lead. In the air to right field. Zobrist goes back at the track.
Oh, the 6-3 win ties the series at 1-1 as it moves on now to Chicago.
Heating up.
It is. We all love that, though.
We do.
Our teams are winning. I'm happy. So if the Dodgers are winning, I'm good. And you're
How
happy.
You feeling, Ed?
I need the Yankees to win tonight.
Okay.
All right, we got more news coming up.
All right, coming up, this Hollywood actor, not this one, says that he is retiring because he's being blacklisted for being a conservative.
Ooh, and President Trump says only one thing will work to stop North Korea. What could that be? Is it military action?
President Trump issuing a new warning to North Korea last night, tweeting this: presidents and their administrations have been talking to North Korea for 25 years. Agreements made and massive amounts of money paid hasn't worked. Agreements violated before the ink was dry, making fools of U.S. negotiators. Sorry, but only one thing will work.
Well, here to weigh in, former CIA analyst Buck Sexton. Buck Sexton, not Bucks, just Buck Sexton.
It's a great name, isn't it?
It is a great name.
I answer to either, sir.
Well, what do you think? What do you think the president means with that? There's only one way to answer this. Is it?
I think President Trump is trying to establish that the old way of doing things is no longer valid and that he has resolve in finishing off this issue one way or another. He's trying to off-balance the Kim regime. He's trying to make sure they understand that the previous method here, the previous status quo, was that we would tell them, look, you need to do this. They wouldn't do it. And then we'd come to some kind of an agreement. We'd give them stuff, and then they would break the agreement. And that has happened time and time again. President Trump is just saying, look, that's no longer going to be acceptable, and all options are on the table. Another part of this is that a possible military option is not just a talking point when it comes to President Trump, and he wants that to be known.
And the last 25 years, as the president saying, they have let North Korea get away with this. And now he's saying we need some real tough talk. How does North Korea, how do you think, you're an expert on this, How are they going to respond? How are they responding?
Well, you have a couple of days coming up here that North Korea may be looking to as an opportunity to make a point. Obviously, internal propaganda for the Kim regime is absolutely essential. You have, in a couple of days, the establishment, the anniversary of the establishment of the Korean Workers' Party. You also have the anniversary of their first nuclear test some years ago. So there are some opportunities here from the Kim regime's perspective to do something big as a show of defiance, and also in keeping with their we have this history, this progression, and that's going to be their way of showing that they will not back down to the Trump administration if, in fact, they go ahead with some kind of a test.
Well, they're going to certainly, I mean, they've been known at those anniversaries and those big moments to show big shows of strength, et cetera. I would expect they're going to do something big, and then the president's going to be forced to respond.
I know. At what point? What is that point? When does the president say, okay, now we are taking action?
Well, if there were to be anything that would cross beyond what we've already seen, I think then because we don't have a playbook, it's going to be up to the president as commander-in-chief to respond to that specific incident. When you have the Kim regime saying things like they may test a nuclear device in the atmosphere over the Pacific Ocean, which they have specifically mentioned, never mind, if they were to attack Guam, Japan, whether an ally or U.S. territory, clearly there would be an overwhelming military response. And by the way, that's not just President Trump. You've also had the Secretary of State make that pretty clear. You've had the U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations, Nikki Haley, say, look, North Korea steps too far out of line. They are going to wish they never did that. So this administration is no longer just saying diplomacy, diplomacy, or else there's no option. They're saying that North Korea needs to get in line, and they better watch what they do over the next few days. They're also leaving open the option of North Korea deciding to play ball with the international community in the United States. They could change this whole thing within a day, but they will be the ones to change it, not the United States through concessions.
That's why this thing is so unsettling, so scary. Buck, good to have you with us.
No kidding. Thank you, Buck.
All right, President Trump dialing up Chuck and Nancy for a deal on health care. Is this the only way to get a deal done, or more about sending a message to Republicans? We've got a panel here to discuss that next.
And the anthem protests are leaving their mark. Football is no longer the most popular sport in America for the first time in decades. It's terrible. The shocking new poll numbers just ahead.
And we are back with some quick headlines. And what a birthday gift for Putin. Thousands protesting in Russia on Vladimir Putin's 65th birthday, calling for his resignation. They're rallying in support of the opposition leader, demanding that he be allowed to run against Putin. More than 250 protests were arrested. And a nuclear-like gas explosion sends thousands running for their lives. A tank catching fire at a gas station in Ghana's capital, triggering 2 explosions and killing 200 police personnel were deployed.
Thanks, Abby. President Trump not giving up on his promise to determined he's now reaching out to one of his biggest political rivals, Democrat Chuck Schumer of New York. The president tweeting Saturday, I called Chuck Schumer yesterday to see if the Dems want to do a great health care bill. Obamacare is badly broken. Big premiums, who knows? But is that a smart move? Here to weigh in, our panel. RNC spokesperson Kayleigh McEnany and Ballotpedia editor-at-large Scott Rasmussen, along with Fox News contributor and Democratic strategist Richard Fowler. Good morning, all. Kayleigh, what is the president up to?
Well, look, the president's looking at the pain of the American people all across the nation. $3,000 premium increases on average since Obama. Unacceptable. We have to move forward. We have to deliver relief. If that means a temporary fix with Chuck and Nancy and then repeal and replace, that's what it means. But the people have to come first.
So are you saying the president would be willing to do something short of repeal and replace, even though that's what his base wants, and try to get to it down the road?
Look, I can't speak to exactly what was said between, Chuck and Nancy and the president, but what I can say is the president has remained loyal to his base from day one. Think about this, Ed, on DACA, on the Paris Climate Accord, very tough decisions. He's always remained loyal to the base. So I think he is well aware that repeal and replace has to happen, but that means Republicans and Democrats coming to the table.
So, Richard, what about that? Democrats, as you know, your party is very much determined to stop repeal and replace. Chuck Schumer has had an open mind about working with the president on some budget issues we've seen, but it's been very limited. Is there some middle ground here on health care to sort of stabilize the insurance markets and take some smaller steps?
Well, I think there is some middle ground here on health care, and I think there's the Alexander Murray bill that's currently being worked on in the United States Senate, where I think you can get some bipartisan support for. But with that being said, what you saw in Chuck Schumer's statement yesterday is repeal and replace is not an option for Democrats. So by the fact that the president reaching out to Chuck and Nancy, as he so eloquently calls them, yesterday, it makes it very clear to him that he's not going to work with Republicans, and he's saying if Republicans can't get it done, I'm willing to work across the aisle with Democrats, but that means he's going to have to put repeal and replace on the back burner, and let's actually try to fix the Affordable Care Act to work for more Americans.
And Scott, to Richard's point, pardon me, if you look at what Senator Schumer put out, he had a statement making it very clear that he doesn't want repeal and replace. The president wanted to make another run at repeal and replace, and I told the president together to improve the existing health care system. We Democrats are open to his suggestions. A good place to start might be the Alexander Murray negotiations, which you just heard about, that would stabilize the system and lower costs. Here's my question, Scott. What might get through the Senate with Chuck Schumer's blessing, that's going to have a really hard time to get past the Freedom Caucus in the House, right?
There's no chance it will get past the Freedom Caucus in the House. I think when you look at the president's tweet, he started off by saying Obamacare is badly broken. That is a premise that Democrats reject. And so that means the two sides are starting these negotiations from fundamentally different points. Second, the Trump administration is pushing for deregulation on everything, including some new regulations they want to roll back on health care. Democrats want to go in the opposite direction. They're pulling the weight of their party right now is pushing for the ultimate regulation, single-payer coverage. So you've got these two views that are entirely different. I don't see this leading to legislation. But it might be a shot across the bow for the Republicans to get something done in 2019.
So,
or
Kayleigh,
2018.
if it's unlikely to, result in legislation, be focused more tax cuts, infrastructure, other issues, he might have a better shot at getting a bipartisan deal.
Well, look, he's focusing on all of those things, but the president doesn't give up. Other people might want to put Obamacare repeal and replace to the side because it's too politically sensitive at the moment. But President Trump is moving forward, and Democrats need to accept the premise that Obamacare is broken. I've talked to a mom who had to sell her son's ATV. He's a serviceman just to pay her premiums. People whose premiums cost more than their mortgages. It's unacceptable to allow Obamacare to stand, plain and simple.
Richard, last word. We talked about the president's base maybe not being happy about getting to repeal and replace. What about the Democratic base if they're doing deals with the president?
I don't think Democrats would be upset about doing this with the president, but I think we understand one thing, that the Affordable Care Act, while it's not perfect, has fixed what was a broken health care system prior to it. Remember, before the Affordable Care Act, people were denied coverage based on pre-existing conditions. Before the Affordable Care Act, being pregnant was a pre-existing condition. Before the Affordable Care Act, health care costs was skyrocketing through the roof. Last year, health care costs overall only increased by 1.2%, which is a ridiculous decrease from where it was previously. So let's have a real conversation about and throw away this mantra of repeal and replace, which is a Republican talking point that they've used for 8 years and can't get it done. And let's actually focus on making the Affordable Care Act work for more Americans.
All right, Richard, Scott, Kayleigh, we appreciate you coming in.
Thanks.
Tropical storm Nate still packing a punch as it heads north from the Gulf Coast. Rick Reichmuth tracking the storm next. Plus, President Trump firing back at late-night comics for their one-sided coverage. Coming up, we'll hear from a comedian who says they're not doing it for ratings. They just don't like the president and his agenda. Plus, the anthem protests seem to be leaving their mark. Football is no longer the most popular sport in America. That's right, for the first time in decades. Will the protests continue on Football Sunday today?
We are back with a Fox News alert. Hurricane Nate weakening now to a tropical storm, quickly moving north this morning.
But the storm's still posing a threat to some states as it moves further inland.
We turn to Chief Meteorologist, Rick Reichmuth.
Nice.
For the latest on where Nate is headed. I got it, Rick.
Thank you. That was nicely done. Nicely done. Dean Cain, easiest name ever.
It's true.
Yeah, it's not fair.
I know, right? Not at all. Yeah, we have a lot of moisture still ahead from Nate. Take a look at what's going to happen through Tuesday. Much of Alabama and throughout the southern Appalachians, through Tennessee Valley into the Ohio Valley. A lot of people getting 2 to 4 inches of rain, which will cause some localized flooding. But some spots within that, especially in towards the North Georgia mountains, I think we're going to be talking about maybe 6 to 8 inches of rain. going. That's going to primarily be happening today, and that's why we're going to be looking at this flood threat. Here is kind of what happens. The trajectory of the storm doesn't become as important for any kind of, obviously, landfall or where the worst of the weather is, but it gives you an idea of the track of it. We're also watching this get caught up in a front. That's really what's been pulling this up towards the north. That continues to pull up towards the east, but we've got a lot of moisture here over the next couple of days all across the eastern seaboard. Tomorrow, a bad travel day all across the east, and get ready also with some severe weather embedded in there. So maybe some tornadoes throughout the day today, tonight, and into tomorrow as well. Guys?
All right. Thank you, Rick. Keep a close eye on that. All right. Turning out to some other headlines that we are watching this morning. President Trump defending his relationship with Rex Tillerson, the Secretary of State, but telling reporters there is one thing that he could do.
We have a very good relationship. We need a couple of things. Sometimes I'd like him to be a little bit tougher. But other than that, we have a very good relationship.
Oh, the president also denying an NBC News report which claimed Tillerson was thinking about resigning. The president calling it, as he always does, fake news. Also, this mega Hollywood producer Harvey Weinstein loses 2 key advisors in the latest fallout of his sexual harassment scandal. His Los Angeles attorney Lisa Bloom is parting ways after being criticized for representing Weinstein. Crisis manager Lanny Davis also stepping down. The New York Times reported earlier this week that the Oscar-winning producer sexually harassed numerous female co-workers for 30 years, including high-profile actresses. That story just keeps getting worse and worse. And actor James Woods is retiring from acting after claiming he was blacklisted by Hollywood. Woods announcing his retirement in a real estate listing for one of his 4 Rhode Island homes. The actor has claimed that no one wants to hire him because of his conservative political views. The 70-year-old is planning to make more time for passions like, what is that?
Antiquing.
And photography. What is antique? Oh, just checking out
going
antiques.
around shopping.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, it's
Hanging
like
out,
when you go
finding
shop
stuff.
to shop.
Okay.
He's earned it.
I do that a lot.
No, you don't have. And it's a yearly tradition at the Bush Ranch. Former President George W. Bush kicking off the 2017 Bush Warrior 100K bike ride in Texas.
I'm thrilled y'all are here, and just know that we love you. Let's go ride.
The event, which helps wounded veterans get back on their feet, is one that's dear to the 43rd president's heart.
Been hurt, and they're coming back from their injuries, and vets helping vets is the best way to help people transition from the military to civilian life.
Such a great cause. Well, next hour, Dr. Mark Siegel joins us live with President Bush's touching interview. You do not want to miss that one. Still, I'm trying to figure out antiquing.
I was going to go.
You're too young for the antiquing. You can't be doing
I was going to watch the NFL today, but I'm going to go antiquing this afternoon.
No, you're going to watch the NFL today.
No, because he's like so many people now that when they are asked, there's a new survey out. When asked about what is your favorite sport or something along those lines, the NFL is now dropping to 3rd place in the month of September. Take a look at that.
Behind baseball.
Big drop between August and September. So at that point in August, it was neck and neck with baseball. You can see in September, MLB 63% favorability. NBA, which is starting up its season soon, 46%. NFL, 44%. I mean, they're in the thick of the season, Dean. This should be when people are getting excited about the NFL.
Well, they should, and I am. I love the NFL. I love watching it. I know you might go to a Giants game today. I played for the Buffalo Bills.
How long, Dean?
45 minutes, 50 minutes, somewhere an hour.
But not a lot of people know that about you.
There's a picture. Look at this. Look at that picture right there. There's Ralph Wilson, Hall of Fame owner, and then I'm hiding in the back right there.
I can see 36.
There's 2 Hall of Famers, Bruce Smith and Ralph Wilson, and then there's a little guy, number 36.
What was your position?
Free safety.
Nice.
Free safety. But here's the problem, I think, what's going on with the NFL. I think viewers are, the people are taking the protests. We used to not actually air the NFL, the anthem at the beginning of an NFL game. It'd play when you're in the stadium. We wouldn't air it. Now it's become a protest thing. And what they do is they always focus on whoever is taking a knee. The camera gets right in their face. They make a big deal out of it. I'm sitting at home. I don't want to see it. I don't want them to focus on it. I don't want to see the big deal. Show me the patriotic guys. Show me that stuff, and I'll be happier. And I bet it'll flip it over.
Fox Sports, CBS, if they don't show it, it looks like you're not being transparent. It looks like you're covering it up or you're sweeping it under the carpet.
You can show it.
What you're saying,
you can show it, but don't do this. you know, hey, who's sitting there? You know, give it a shot, fine. And then let's not talk about it. It's there. They've made their protest. It's not about protest then. It's about the flag, and it's about, you know, our anthem and those people who have fought and died for the flag.
Do you think it's going to start coming around as the season heats up? I mean, right now, MLB is hot because they're in the playoffs. There's been some exciting games like last night in Washington, tonight at Yankee Stadium. Will, as the NFL heats up, it's only week 4, week 5, you know, do you think it'll come back?
I think it will. I think, for me, you know, America's pastime's always been baseball. They say that, but football has been the most watched, and it's a big deal. And I think it's going to come back. But I think they should stop focusing so much on the people protesting. Stop making that the deal and let them play football, and let's let the fans enjoy the game again.
That's why I always love college sports.
Yeah.
Because you don't see this. You don't see the focus, you know, the camera angle. You don't see, you know, the politics as the focus of the game. You were at the Princeton game yesterday.
Yes, and I stood for the national anthem at the Princeton game with my hand over my heart.
Everyone stood?
Everyone stood. Nobody took a knee. There's even a hockey player.
Yeah, NHL player from the Lightning.
Is that
raised his fist last night?
Yeah.
You could see the protest.
Yeah.
And so it's expanded in some ways. We'll see what happens on the NFL gridiron today, whether or not we still continue to see this or it's going to finally calm down.
Yeah. People have the right. I'm not saying people shouldn't. They don't have the right at all. I'm just saying that I'd rather see respect for our flag, and then I'd like to see the sports.
For you and so many other people, you know what? It's just a pride for this country. If there are a few seconds out of the crazy lives we live to focus on our patriotism and focus on the flag, it's during the national anthem. If we can't do that, then what do we stand for? I think a lot of people agree with you on that.
Friends at FoxNews.com. Send us a note. Are you still frustrated with the NFL? Is it dissipating a little bit, or you know, is MLB raising Major League Baseball? Is it becoming more popular for you? Friends at FoxNews.com.
All right. Well, he murdered 58 people, injured more than 500 others. Now, one victim's family is suing to stop the Las Vegas killer's girlfriend from keeping his fortune. Do they have a case?
And President Trump firing back at late-night comics for their one-sided coverage. Coming up, we'll hear from a comedian who says they're not doing it for ratings. They just dislike the president and his agenda. Some quick sports headlines. A wild day for college football. Michigan State pulling off a huge upset over Big Brother Michigan, 14-10. Another upset alert, Iowa State toppling Oklahoma in stunning fashion.
Sooners bring pressure. Kemp going up top for Lazard. It's caught. Touchdown, Iowa State.
The Cyclones were 31-point underdogs, finishing off the Sooners 38-31. And Western Michigan and Buffalo going back and forth for 7 overtimes. Western Michigan holding on to win 71-68. Meanwhile, the Indianapolis Colts, honoring their former quarterback, Hall of Famer Peyton Manning, now has a statue outside Lucas Oil Stadium. Vice President Mike Pence will attend today's Colts game as the team retires Manning's number 18 jersey.
Wow. A lot to pack in there.
Thank you. I wish I could read headlines like
Yeah,
Dean Cain.
he's
Sports
good.
headlines, yeah. All right, well, to a serious note now. He killed 58 people, injured nearly 500 more, and now the family of one of the Las Vegas shooting victims filing a petition to freeze the killer's assets and block his girlfriend or any heirs from getting their hands on his fortune.
Fox News contributor Ted Williams is a former D.C. police detective and defense attorney. He joins us now to weigh in live. Ted, what do you think about this? Will the victims' families have an opportunity here? Do they have a case to stop this money, all of his gambling winnings and everything else from going to the girlfriend?
Good morning, guys. I think clearly they do have a case, and I am elated. You know, money won't bring these victims back, but the families have lost so much, and to have this killer benefit. We understand there's been a report that he made over $5 million last year. And I think that the victims clearly should have that money. As a matter of fact, if the decent thing that I think Mary Lou Dantley and Eric, who is his brother, and any other heirs who would have any stake in his money, they should just give it to these victims.
So we don't know a whole lot, which is sometimes it seems unusual in a case like this. Usually they can find something on social media, maybe people that were in his inner circle that saw signs that would lead to something like this. But so far, at least as we know, there's nothing. On 60 Minutes tonight, you're going to have some police officers who were the first to raid that room that he was in, and they found on his bedside table a handwritten note of calculations of where he was standing on that 32nd floor and the calculations of how close he was to the people, basically hoping to kill as many people as possible. What does that tell you when you look at that?
Abby, that tells me that we're dealing with a cold, calculated killer, that he intentionally decided that how many people he wanted to take out at any one time. It is my understanding that the note shows a trajectory of where and how to shoot into that crowd. And we know that this guy was an accountant by trade, so he was using mathematics in order to carry out this very tragic carnage of wonderful, decent human beings.
So obviously shows premeditation as well, because he's mapping out in that note, Ted, exactly how he can inflict the most damage. But what do you make of the lack of a motive at this point? As a former D.C. homicide detective, what kind of hope do you have that they're going to figure this out?
Ed, to be very candid with you, I don't know if they're ever going to be able to get into the mind of this killer and find out his motive. They have looked through videos, and I'm sure the videos would have shown them if anybody else was in that room with this guy. They also have his phone records. They have spoken to Mary Lou Dantley. It is my understanding that there is a possibility that just days before he was with a prostitute there at one of those venues. She, if she comes forward, may very well have some information that she can provide to get into the mind of this killer.